Hello, welcome back to our continuing Angular tutorial. This time we're going to show the results of display a list here. And we see it here, where you can select items here and then see details here as well as edit them. You see how the edit changes and the style and selected changes as well. There's a lot going on here. Let's start with looking at some changes here. We've added a mockheroes.ts at the root of our application with using this template again and the ID 11 and then the names of our heroes. That's exported from this module and then imported down in heroes.component.ts. We'll look at that next. So we import it here again from the current folder up to the parent folder, find the component mockheroes. So that jumps up the levels until it finds that file. We have heroes equal to the heroes array that we've imported here. This will give us a local property for that list. Here we have selected hero. This question mark means it's optional, also being the selected hero. So it starts out as null or undefined, and then on select here, when the on select method happens, and we'll find that click event here. This click event simply sets the selected hero to the hero that's passed as a parameter. The constructor is unchanged and ONG, NG, and net is unchanged. Let's look at the component HTML then. So we begin with the H2, my heroes, and then we have an unordered list with the class is equal to heroes. So we've introduced some CSS into this, and we'll look at that next. That's why we're calling out heroes here, and you can obviously see that it's been styled. So we have the unordered list, and within it we have the list item. Something a little bit different here. We see our first Angular directive, star in G4. So that's the repeater directive, and that causes this list item to be repeated for however many elements it finds in this list. This works like a for each loop, with this expression here essentially declaring a variable here that's equal to the current hero object as it iterates through the list. So the ng repeater directory will say repeat the host item for as many times as there are in this list. So we see Dr. Nice and then tornado ending. And we see how the list was defined as well. Next, we see Angular's syntax for selective CSS. So class.selected, that is, this is some CSS selector, becomes active if this expression is true. That is, hero equals selected hero. Now, we look back at we tie that back to our onClick method or onSelected method here, and we see that when we select the item, that style becomes relevant for that item, and it changes back and forth. So say tornado is now the selected item, and it gets that style. We'll look at the style CSS in one moment. So again, the syntax here, brackets, class.selected, becomes true or becomes active when this statement, that is, the current hero is equal to the selected hero, and then this style comes into play. Here's Angular syntax for a click handler, parentheses click equals onSelect hero, this expression here, and we saw that back in the TypeScript file here. Able to pass a parameter, which is the current hero, and remember, we've expanded that out with this for each loop. So each hero, that hero is a different object for each element in that list. We then have a class called badge, which styles this number, and then that ends the span here. So a span is just a HTML element just to hold a style. It doesn't cause a line break or a block element. And then we have angle brackets or not angle brackets, curly braces, two sets of curly braces, which binds this hero.name element in here, and just like hero.id here, with the slightly different styles as well. So then we see the list item expands out here, according to how many items there are in the list. Next we see our second use of a ng directive, ng if selected hero. It's really looking for, is selected hero truthy? That is, is it selected? So when it was defined, it wasn't when it was when the variable was defined, it wasn't set to anything. So that will initially evaluate to false here. So if I refresh the page, you'll see the false evaluation. That is, ng if is evaluated to false. So this div, the entire thing, disappears, doesn't exist. So that protects us against undefined exceptions inside of here, because this div doesn't exist in the HTML at all, or the document object model, until ngIf is evaluated to true. Once we have a selected hero, then it evaluates to true, and so selected hero.name is sent to uppercase. We see that here in the details section. Then we have an ID in the div here, and the hero ID here, and then a label for the hero name. This is associated with this ID down here. And then our two-way directive for ng model equals selected hero.name, and a placeholder that's never used because it always has a name. This gives us an input editor for the hero. The last thing we need to take a look at is this CSS file, where you can see the various elements of the CSS that are being applied. This is private CSS, and this is what's nice. One thing that's nice about Angular, there's clearly private CSS here. That is, this CSS is only known inside of this component, the heroes component. It would work equally well. In fact, let's take this CSS and disappear it from here. I'll save the file. And then here you see the unstyled element of the CSS. The controls still work as proper, because CSS doesn't change the way the controls work, but it's an unstyled, unordered list, and everything else is not styled as well. So we can put this style in the global style here, which is currently empty, and get the same effect. So this is coming from the global CSS, that is, every component sees it, and this is local CSS. I'll disappear it from here, save the file, and it goes back to the very plain look of it, and then restore it back to the local CSS where it belongs. Nice facility to be able to have both global CSS, that is the CSS that should apply to every component in our Angular app, versus CSS that just applies to the current component. All right, that's step number 2 of our Angular tutorial. Next time we'll see create a feature component. Thank you.